Good morning. I'm Reverend Jenna Watkins. I'm the Assistant Minister for the Center of Spiritual Living Space Coast. If you have never been to a Center for Spiritual Living before, we believe that there is one God with many paths to that God. And we're here to love, honor, and support you no matter what your divine path is. The Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you are welcome here. This morning, I will open with an invocation and a reading, and then will be followed by our guest speaker, Reverend Shel Redfern. Her topic today is the joy of becoming. So I invite you all to just settle back into whatever you're sitting on. If you'd like, close your eyes and take a nice, slow, deep breath and just allow yourself to relax in to this very sacred moment. This moment where we tune our awareness into the truth of who we are. We are that love. We are that love that makes all things possible. We are that love that flows from the divine in and through each and every one of us, connecting us from heart to heart, soul to soul. For wherever we are, you are, they are, we are all one in consciousness and one in love. And I am grateful this day for all who have come to join us in this very sacred moment, this time of remembering, this time of growth, this time of becoming a greater experience of our true selves, opening our hearts and our minds to a greater awareness of who each and every one of us is. I give thanks for the volunteers, those who support this ministry, that it can continue to go. And I especially bless and am grateful for our guest speaker today, Reverend Shel Redfern. For I know from experience that her heart and her wisdom touches each and every one of us in a unique way. And because of her wisdom, of her thoughtfulness, of her heart, her essence, we all experience a greater sense of becoming more of who we are. And for all of this, I do give thanks, and so it is. So my reading today is by Alan Cohen, and it's called Terminal Improvements. As I approached the departure area of an airport undergoing remodeling, I saw a sign that grabbed my attention: Terminal Improvements. Although the sign referred to the construction, I was tickled by its double meaning. Endless self-fixing is a detour from the spiritual path. We can become so obsessed with personal growth that we lose sight of the truth that everything we need is within us, and we are good enough just as we are. The path to enlightenment is not one of self-improvement, but self-discovery. When we recognize that we are whole, the game shifts from getting something from outside of us to releasing the splendor within us. Seminars, books, psychic and astrological readings, trainings, techniques, and practices can be extremely helpful, but they can also be a means to hide from living life where you are. At some point, we must admit that we have amassed all the data we need and get on with applying what we have learned. Gandhi affirmed, "My life is my message," and we must aspire to this ideal. First, we talk the talk, then we talk the walk, then we walk the talk, then we walk the walk. Reflect the highest truth simply by living what you know and being what you are. So now I'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Joy Redfern. She was originally from Wisconsin, but she moved to Florida in 1990, and a couple years later, she found the Church of Religious Science, Cape Coral, and it was immediately hooked onto the philosophy. She expanded her journey of self-discovery, and she ignited a passion for the creative process that continues to inform her life. Shel is a certified dream builder coach, an ordained minister for the Centers of Spiritual Living, and past spiritual director for the Center of Spiritual Living, Cape Coral. And her title today is The Joy of Becoming. So please, let's welcome Shel Redfern.
Good morning, everybody. I am so happy to be here. Is everybody hearing and seeing me okay, Jenna? Everything okay technically on that side?
I think so. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. So as Jenna mentioned, my talk title today is The Joy of Becoming, and that is a title from home office. So there are hundreds, probably thousands of centers around the world today giving a talk with this title. But of course, each and every one of us has a different angle, a different means that we're approaching this from. And of course, the first question that went through my mind was becoming what? The joy of becoming what? You know, I think as a society, we have become a bunch of human doings as opposed to human beings. And I think that came to mind because of the word becoming itself. It's becoming, you know, so a human being, a human being. Jenna's reading was perfect. You know, when do we sink back into just being ourselves? When do we allow ourselves to allow the history that we have cultivated inform where we're moving forward, where we're not just into all this self-help and change and change and change. Though part of my talk is talking about change, sorry. But we are busy doing stuff all the time, running around, especially this time of year. And it's important to remember to be still, to turn back within and listen to that still small voice that's always there saying, here's what I've brought you here to do. Here's what I brought you here to do. Now, when I give a talk, I have a Kindle, and I love my Kindle, and I have a Kindle on my computer. And so I can open my Kindle on my computer and put in a word, and it searches the document for that word. Cool feature of a Kindle on a computer, especially when you're a speaker. So I opened up the Science of Mind textbook, and I put in the word becoming. And Ernest Holmes used the word becoming all over the place. And I have this wonderful, wonderful quote from the Science of Mind text to share with you. There is something called God that makes things out of itself by becoming the things it makes according to law and order. So I'm going to repeat that, okay? There's something called God. Now, we don't need to call it God. We can call it spirit. We can call it life. We can call it energy. We can call whatever we want, whatever we're comfortable with, okay? There is something that makes things out of itself by becoming the things that it makes, but according to law and order. Now, what this means is that we are spirit in form, that this thing that I'm running around in, this bodysuit, is spirit in form. That means that all of the trees and grass and animals are spirit in form. That means that the entire earth is spirit in form. That means that the entire cosmos is spirit in form. Spirit made all of these forms out of itself. And that is a core belief of this philosophy, that there is not a spot where spirit, God, life is not, that is everywhere present. But our awareness of that might be a little bit not present, right? Our awareness of that can come and go. Our awareness of that or acceptance of that is what we talk about on these Sundays. We try to bring ourselves back to this idea, God, spirit is all there is. I'm out of spirit stuff. So is everybody that I encounter on this planet. So is every situation that I encounter on this planet. But it's kind of up to me to have that discernment that regardless of what's showing up and how it's showing up, it's still spirit. That can be really challenging sometimes. That can be really challenging sometimes with things that show up as our life experience, can it? It can be very challenging. I read a story recently about a man named Tom Shum, and hopefully I'm pronouncing his last name right, Schumm, I believe, Tom Shum. And the story went on to tell how in his 50s, his early 50s, he got married, he settled down, had a career, and was just finally, catching his stride about 54, 55. He's about 6 months into his new marriage when he gets a diagnosis. Now, we've all been there. It may not be a diagnosis, but it could be a life tragedy. It could be a loss of a job. It could be something, but we've all been there where everything is looking like it's going great. And then something happens. So for Tom, he got a diagnosis of a brain tumor, and he was given 4 to 6 months to live at the happiest point in his life. And you know what? He was angry. He got so angry. He was mad at God. He was mad at the doctors. He was mad. He was just angry. Well, you can understand why, to go all this distance and now finally be in this place and then get this diagnosis, 4 to 6 months to live. What the heck? This is not the way it's supposed to work, right? Well, he was offered an opportunity to go onto an experimental drug. It was inoperable cancer, so he couldn't have surgery. So he was offered the opportunity because he was terminal. That's the only reason he was offered this opportunity. Because he was terminal, he was offered the opportunity to go on an experimental drug. So he did it because it was like the only thing that might maybe do something, but they weren't sure. So they put him on this drug, and he had horrendous side effects, really, really horrible side effects. He was sick a lot of the time. Well, that just made him angrier. So now he's out in the Midwest and it's January, and he's outside walking around in the snow, and he's cussing out God and he's cussing out the doctors, and he's getting angrier. And somewhere inside of him, he heard the voice of an old friend, a mentor and a teacher that he had. And this guy was W. Clement Stone. Now, maybe you're familiar with Stone. He's a very, very popular guy in the positive thinking. He was one of the first people that came out and talked about what positive thinking meant and the impact that thinking positive could have on our life. And he clearly heard in his mind this: every adversity carries within it the seed of equivalent or greater benefit for those who have a positive mental attitude. That's a quote by W. Clement Stone. I'm going to repeat that one again. It's very, very powerful. Every adversity carries within it the seed of equivalent or greater benefit to those who have a positive mental attitude. And when he heard those words play in his brain, it stopped him, it stunned him. And he started to think, and he started to recall his time with W. Clement Stone and what it meant and how he felt and the differences that happened in his life. And he remembered that Stone said very frequently, I reasoned this, I reasoned that. Whenever he would get into a problem, and he actually described a situation where Stone was approached by a man who held a gun to his head. And Stone said, well, I reasoned that he could kill me, or I reasoned that he could kill himself, or I reasoned that this, and he ended up turning the gun on himself, then putting the gun down. And later Stone would give him the opportunity to open a business, and he became a flourishing businessman. All this because Stone decided to go towards the positive. That's a sidebar story, but you get it. So, but I reasoned is one of the things that Stone said all the time. So Tom thought, what if I reason with this situation? Would I feel differently about it if I reasoned it? So he looked at the situation and he said, okay, so I have cancer and I'm dying and I'm miserable and I'm angry. Now, if I die and I'm miserable and angry up until the time that I die, I get to die an angry, miserable man. I can be depressed and then I go. Well, what impact would that have? Well, that means that the people that I love died with me being angry and miserable. And they wouldn't reflect upon me very positively, or the experience, especially of the end of my life, very positively, because I was so angry and miserable and I took it out on them. He didn't like the feeling of that at all. And he said, well, what if I didn't die, Well, then I'd just be angry and miserable the rest of my life. Well, that doesn't sound so great. Well, I decided to be pleasant. What if I decided to be positive and I died? Well, then people would remember me as a very brave man who faced adversity and was positive in the face of adversity. And I would die happy. And I wouldn't die miserable. I would die happy. And what if I lived? I would live past that being a happy man. And he said it was there that he stopped dying and he started living, truly living, for the first time in his life. And he decided it didn't matter if he lived or he died, but he was going to create a positive experience for his life starting right then. Starting right then. It was a decision on his part to create something. Well, as it turns out, that experimental method, as much as it made him sick and miserable and everything else, worked. It worked. And he's alive today. 5 years later, the cancer came back. He again went to the experimental drug. They had done lots more experiments on it. And it was effective in removing the cancer twice. But what had really, really changed, yes, the cancer, he claims today that the cancer was the greatest gift that life ever gave him, was this cancer, because of what it helped him to understand and realize about his role in his life. It actually gave him his life back. And to me, that is part of the joy of becoming. The joy of becoming is looking at the adversities that are going on in our life or have gone on in our life and have them be building blocks for something awesome, because they are put in place so that we can discover and uncover who we are if we choose to do that. But like Tom discovered, we can choose to be miserable and bitter and angry, or we can choose not to. And so the choice is always ours, though, always ours. I found another Holmes quote while I was looking up becoming, and it is this: all infinite being and all, let me try that again. All is infinite being and all is eternally becoming. We are in a constant state of evolution. We are in a constant state of becoming. So why not find joy in that? Why not find joy in that? Well, sometimes it can be a little hard to find joy in becoming. I've been there. We've all been there when it's a little bit hard. And so this is where we can go towards those self-help. We can go towards the seminars and the books and the whatever, like Jenna was talking about, because if we can't get out of our own ways and become joy-filled, what can we do? So I read a beautiful article in doing my work for this, and it was called The Journey of Becoming, and it was by a guy named Easton Hampton. And it was really, really, really fascinating. It talked about our behaviors. And here's a quote from that article. Behaviors are like sowing seeds in the field of infinite possibility, and your nature is the fruit of those seeds that those seeds eventually bear. So I'm going to read that again. It's powerful. I'm going to dissect it a little bit. Behaviors are like sowing seeds in the fields of infinite possibility. So our behaviors, what we are doing when we're being a human doing, what we are doing is sowing seeds into infinite mind. It's telling infinite mind what we'd like to get more of, right? All of our doings is telling infinite mind, this is what I want to see. This is what, and we can think of them as seeds, and we're planting gardens everywhere we go by our doings. Isn't that an interesting thought? So thinking precedes our doing. So we always say thoughts are things, and what seeds are you sowing? Thoughts only go so far. We know this in manifesting things that we're desiring. We also maybe don't look at it in things that we don't desire. What seeds are we planting by doing things that are not necessarily in harmony with who we see ourselves as being? Because at all times, our behaviors are sowing seeds in infinite possibility. We get to choose how we behave. We get to choose how we think. And we get to choose the seeds that we sow. Okay. He goes on to say, and your nature is the fruit of that those seeds eventually bear. Now, this is what the article was about. He was talking about life happening, and that in response to life happening, we develop certain behaviors. Now, these behaviors can be things that we consciously choose, but they can also be things that we're influenced by the people around us. It's part of the reason that pay attention to who you surround yourself with, because you want to be with people that will help build those dreams that you have, support you who you are, love you where you are. And as you're growing into your greater yet to be, but there can be people that want to tear us down. There can be people that just have bad habits. There can be, and I don't want to label anything as bad, but as in unsupportive habits, right? We have people that in our lives that have beliefs that maybe don't correspond with ours, but they have a big influence on how we think and behave. Of course, when we're children, the way we think and behave is influenced a great deal by our parents and our siblings, because we pick up on their behaviors and their thoughts and take them on as truths. And sometimes as adults, we have to undo all of that or a lot of that so that our own self can emerge, right? So his idea is that life is happening and we develop behaviors in response to those things that are happening in life. Now, these behaviors blend together and they become patterns. I think looking at the patterns in our life is probably the most effective thing that we can do if we want to create self-evolution or change. What am I habitually doing? Right? So these patterns, again, it's telling this infinite, how did he put it? Infinite possibility. It's telling infinite possibility, this is what I want to see. When we develop a pattern, we're nurturing the behaviors within ourselves. We're repeating the behaviors in ourselves, and they're becoming embedded within ourselves, right? These patterns become traits, personality traits. Are you seeing the evolution here? So it starts with behavior, goes to a pattern, becomes a personality trait. Now, behaviors influence 2 to 10% of our decision-making until they are repeated. Once the behaviors are repeated and become a trait, they influence 25% of our decision-making. So are we doing things, being human doing, are we doing things that are supportive of who we see ourselves as, what we want to see ourselves as? Are we doing things that support that, or are we doing something alternatively? Left unchecked, personality traits become personality. Now, once a trait becomes your personality, and again, this is more building on the behavior patterns, right? 50% of your decisions are influenced by your personality, 50%. And it all started with behaviors, which we can change, right? After it becomes your personality, it becomes your character, and then it becomes your nature. So you can see that the more that we repeat these patterns, the more that we repeat these behaviors, they become bigger parts of who we are. But they aren't who we are. We are spirit in form. We are pure potential. We have something within us that is seeking to emerge as our life, as what we are here to do. And there is something inside of us, that still small voice, that is saying, you know, Shel, Shel. You can hear it if you give it space. You can hear it if you give it time. It is there. I promise you, it is there. So I think that understanding what our behaviors are is really important, obviously, because of the influence that has on our experience in the world. One more thing about becoming. Now we've talked about, what becoming is, and then we get to choose, and then there's behavior patterns, and we can be aware of our behavior patterns and how that influences everything. Another thing I love doing is looking up words in dictionaries when I'm using them in a talk. And when I looked up becoming, it said flattering. That dress is very becoming on you. That outfit is very becoming on you. We've used this. So isn't that an interesting thought? So the joy of becoming, when we step into our true self, we shine. So it truly is a joy of becoming. And it is utilizing all of the things that have happened, where these behavior patterns have developed as stepping stones into our greater yet to be. We've been gifted these experiences. I believe, just like Tom did, I believe that we are gifted the experiences, no matter how bad or how traumatic or how horrible, we are gifted that, so that we can step into our true selves. And it is our choice, as it was Tom's choice, to have joy in becoming or not. So I think the invitation today is to step into these changes and experience the joy of becoming. Now, normally I would close with an Ernest Holmes quote, but I have part of that article that I was referring to that I thought was just wonderful. So I'd like to use this as my closing paragraph today. Now what you need to do is to take the journey from knowing to doing, because it is only, because it is only what you do that can enable you to change anything that you are dissatisfied with in your life. Let's see if I can read that a little bit smoother. Now you need to take the journey from knowing, because we can know what's going on. We can talk about this all the time. We can, I know that if I do this, I know that if I change that, and here's where human doing is okay. All right. Now you need to take the journey from knowing to doing, because it is only in what you do that can enable you to change anything you are dissatisfied with in your life. It is not enough to want it to go away. You actually need to desperately want to change it. Now, the author is speaking to these behaviors that have become patterns, that have become traits, that have become personality, that have become character, nature. If we want to change and release what we are, We have to desperately want it because we have to put aside all of these patterns that we've developed as our life. Until you cultivate a healthy obsession, he says, a burning desire to change, you're unlikely to do the things that you need to do consistently for personal transformation to take place. So if we want to have a personal transformation, if we want to have the joy of becoming as our everyday, we have to want it so bad that we can recognize the patterns that are going on and set them aside. It's so much easier. The subconscious mind is a funny thing. We have well-worn paths in our subconscious mind. You might think of it as a forest. And in the forest, there are pathways that we navigate. That's how our brain works. Our brain is like a big forest, and we have these well-worn pathways, otherwise known as behaviors, otherwise known as patterns, otherwise known as traits, character, and all that, right? These are just pathways in our brain. But we get to choose different pathways. But what happens if you're in a forest and you develop a different pathway? You decide that I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to do something different, doggone it. I'm going to change my life right now. And you start to cultivate a new pathway. Well, when you have to get all the brambles and bushes and branches and stuff out of the way so that you can create this pathway in the forest, right? Well, the same thing goes for your brain. You have to get the brambles and the bushes and the trees and everything out of the way so that you can cultivate this new pathway. And when it gets dark and when it gets scary, are you going to go down the new pathway, or are you going to go down the well-worn one because you know it so well? You're going to go down the well-worn one because you know it so well, unless you are so dedicated to that change that no matter what, you navigate that new pathway. Or if you go down the well-worn one once, you say, oh, I blew it, and go and cultivate that pathway some more, and go and cultivate that new pathway some more. It takes discipline. It takes time. That's just the way the brain works. Unless it's something that's earth-shattering, then sometimes it can blow a hole right into that pathway, right? We've all experienced that too. So where was I? Until you cultivate a healthy obsession, a burning desire to change, you're unlikely to do the things you need to do consistently, that's wearing that new pathway, for personal transformation to take place. Sustainable solutions are not found in wishy-washy intentions, followed by lame and inconsistent actions. Oh, that's harsh, isn't it? Oh, that's way harsh, but I like it. Sustainable solutions are not found in wishy-washy intentions, followed by lame and inconsistent actions. Success does not live in that place. So really grasp the opportunity being offered to you here today and realize that nothing and no one can stop you from fulfilling your potential once you decide this is what you want. This, my friends, is the joy in becoming. This is absolutely what the joy of becoming looks like. So really grasp the opportunity being here, offered here to you, and realize that nothing and no one can stop you from fulfilling your potential, your dream, you, once you decide that this is what you want to do. Take the journey of creating new positive behaviors to transform your nature, and you'll soon discover that you can really become whatever you choose. He closes with this beautiful quote. Whenever I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Lao Tzu. Isn't that wonderful? Whenever I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. I tell you that song was perfect. Think it, dream it, believe it, do it. All one mind, all one thing, and all spirit seeking fuller, freer expression of itself and using us to do that. So let's give way so that it can and experience the joy of becoming. Jenny, you said I could go ahead and do a prayer. I'm so used to ending a talk that way, so I'm going to do that today, and we're going to anchor some of these truths. So settling into the right here, right now, and knowing together there's a single power presence in life. That is the life of spirit. That is life itself. That is the life of each one. Watching this talk, watching this recording, each one of us is spirit in form. Always and in all ways, we are spirit made manifest, stardust made manifest. We are holy in nature and we are whole in nature. Both an H and a W there, holy and whole in nature. We are perfect right where we are. And there is something seeking freer expression by means of us, and it needs us to give it license. So right here and now, let us experience together the joy of becoming more of who we are right here and now. Traits, ideas, beliefs that no longer serve each one on this call fall to the no thingness where they belong, that the truth of their true beingness can emerge. Something has shifted deeply in each one as a result of these truths being spoken today. I know that lives are changed. I know that harmony, love, joy are the spirit of the day, are the means with which each and every one of us moves in the world from this moment forward. Today is the day that everything changed. And for this and so much more, I am grateful and thankful. And it is in this gratitude that I release my word into law, knowing it is done. And so it is. Thank you so much, my friends. Namaste.